The wind howled like a mournful dirge across the fjord, carrying with it the scent of salt and coming snow. Saga Gunnardottir stood at the prow of her father's longship, her golden hair whipping around her face as the vessel cut through the churning waters of the North Sea. The year was 847, and winter was fast approaching. Soon the sea would freeze, trapping their vessels on shore until spring's thaw. One final raid before the long dark, that was all her father had promised. "A woman aboard brings ill fortune," grumbled Ulf the Red, one of her father's most trusted warriors. "Especially one who fancies herself a shield maiden." Saga's hand instinctively moved to the iron sword at her hip, a gift from her father on her 18th name day. Though she had trained in secret for years, learning the ways of combat from her brothers, many still viewed her presence as an affront to the natural order. "My daughter has the blessing of Freya herself," boomed Gunnar Thorolfsson, striding across the deck. His massive frame blocked the wind momentarily as he approached. "Question her place again, Ulf, and you'll find yourself swimming home." Saga smiled at her father, though the expression did not reach her eyes. She knew what the men whispered when her back was turned, that Gunnar indulged her only because her mother died birthing her, that his grief had addled his mind. For sons he had, all strong warriors, yet he allowed his daughter to train alongside them. What none knew was that on the night of Saga's birth, as her mother's life slipped away, the old Volva of their village had come to Gunnar with a prophecy. The Cirrus had fallen into a trance beside the birthing bed, her eyes rolling back to reveal only whites as she spoke words that would haunt Gunnar for 18 winters, a daughter born of storm and blood. "Her hands will shape the fate of realms. Where kings have failed and warriors stood. A crown of stars shall grace her head." The old woman had collapsed then, and when she woke, she remembered nothing of her words. Gunnar told no one, not even his sons. The prophecy remained his secret burden, one that grew heavier as Saga showed the fierce spirit of a true leader. "Land," called the watchman from his perch. "The shores of Northumbria lie ahead." Gunnar's face hardened into the mask of a raider. "Prepare yourselves. Today we take what is owed to us by the soft Christian folk." A cheer rose from the throats of 80 warriors, the sound carrying across the waves like thunder. Saga felt her heart race with both excitement and dread. This would be her first raid, her chance to prove herself worthy of standing among her father's warriors. As the longships approached the shore, Saga could see the small monastery perched on the cliffs above. Its stone walls gleamed pale in the morning light, unaware of the death that sailed toward it. "Remember," Gunnar said, placing a heavy hand on Saga's shoulder. "The Christians believe their God is merciful. Show them that ours are not." The raid was swift and brutal. The monks offered little resistance as the Northmen poured through their gates, taking gold, silver, and anything of value. Saga moved through the chaos with sword drawn, yet found herself hesitating when confronted with the frightened faces of the unarmed men in robes. "Strike, Saga," roared her brother Hakon as he stormed past, his axe dripping red. "Prove you belong here." But before she could act, an arrow whistled through the air, striking Hakon in the shoulder. He staggered, cursing loudly. "Soldiers," someone shouted. "From the village below." Saga turned to see a company of armed men charging up the path toward the monastery. At their head rode a man whose armor gleamed in the weak sunlight, his cloak billowing behind him. "Fall back to the ships," Gunnar commanded. "Take what you've gathered." As the Vikings began their retreat, Saga found herself separated from the main group, cornered in the monastery's small library by 2 Saxon soldiers. With her heart pounding, she raised her sword, remembering all her brothers had taught her. The first man lunged. Saga parried his thrust and spun, her blade finding the gap beneath his arm. He fell with a cry that died in his throat. The second man hesitated, giving Saga the opening she needed. She attacked with fury, driving him back until he stumbled over his fallen comrade. As she raised her sword for the killing blow, a voice rang out. "Stop! I yield." The soldier dropped his weapon, his eyes wide with fear and something else, surprise at being bested by a woman. Saga paused, her blade at his throat. "You speak our tongue." Enough to beg for mercy, he replied in halting Norse. "Please?" I have a family. Something in his plea reached through Saga's battle fury. She lowered her sword slightly, and in that moment of hesitation, the door behind her burst open. Peder! Are you? The newcomer stopped abruptly, taking in the scene before him. Saga whirled to face him, raising her sword once more. The man standing in the doorway was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair falling in waves to his shoulders. Unlike the Saxon soldiers, he wore finely crafted leather armor adorned with silver. His eyes, blue as a summer sky, widened as they met hers. A woman, he said in perfect Norse, his surprise evident. A dead man if you step closer, Saga replied, though she noticed with alarm that more soldiers were gathering in the corridor behind him. The man held up his hands, empty of weapons. I am Peder Brandrson, then to King Ethelred of Northumbria. Lower your sword, shield maiden, and I promise you will not be harmed. The promises of Saxons mean nothing to me, Saga spat, though she knew her position was hopeless. Peder's lips curved slightly. Then perhaps the promise of a man whose grandmother was born in Hedeby might carry more weight. This revelation startled Saga enough that her sword point dipped. Before she could recover, Peder stepped forward with remarkable speed, gripping her wrist and twisting until the weapon clattered to the floor. Forgive me, he said softly as his men surged forward to restrain her. But I cannot let you return to your people. The cell was cold but dry, its stone walls thick enough to muffle the sounds from outside. Saga sat on the narrow bench, her back straight, refusing to show the fear that gnawed at her. They had taken her weapons and her cloak, but left her otherwise unharmed, a courtesy she had not expected from Saxons. The sound of approaching footsteps made her tense. The heavy wooden door swung open to reveal Peder Brandrson, now dressed in finer clothes, a silver arm ring his only ornament. You've caused quite a stir, Viking, he said, closing the door behind him. We rarely capture one of your kind alive, let alone a woman warrior. I am Saga Gunnardottir, daughter of Gunnar Thorolfsson, she replied proudly. My father will burn your entire kingdom to reclaim me. Peder leaned against the wall, studying her. Your father and his raiders are long gone, sailed away on the tide. I doubt they even know you've been captured. The word struck Saga like a physical blow. Had her family truly abandoned her? No, her father would never leave her behind. This was a Saxon trick. You lie, she hissed. Why would I? Peder asked simply. The truth serves me better. Your people fled when our reinforcements arrived. It's what any sensible raider would do. Saga fell silent, her mind racing. If what he said was true, she was utterly alone in enemy territory. What will you do with me? She finally asked. Ransom? Slavery? Peder's expression softened slightly. Neither. King Ethelred wishes to speak with you. It's not every day we encounter a Viking woman who fights with the skill of a trained warrior. Am I to be a curiosity then? Something to gawk at before you execute me? That depends entirely on you, Peder replied. Cooperate, and you may find the Christian God more merciful than your own. Saga laughed bitterly. I have no interest in your nailed God who could not even save himself. A flash of anger crossed Peder's face, quickly controlled. Mock if you will, but remember that you live at our mercy now. He moved toward the door, then paused. You'll be brought before the king tomorrow. I suggest you consider how you wish that meeting to unfold. After he left, Saga paced her small cell like a caged wolf. Her thoughts turned to the old Volva's prophecy that her father had shared with her on her 18th name day, when he had finally explained why he had allowed her to train as a warrior. The words had seemed like meaningless riddles then, but now, captured in a foreign land, she wondered if this was the beginning of the fate the Cirrus had foreseen. A daughter born of storm and blood, she whispered to herself, her hands will shape the fate of realms. Was this strange land to be part of her destiny? King Ethelred's great hall was nothing like the wooden longhouses of Saga's homeland. Stone walls rose high above, adorned with tapestries depicting scenes from their Christian stories. Men in fine garments lined the sides of the hall, watching with undisguised curiosity as she was led forward, her hands bound before her. The king himself was younger than Saga had expected, perhaps 30 winters, with a neatly trimmed beard and shrewd eyes. Beside his wooden throne stood Peder Brandrson, his face impassive as Saga was brought to stand before them. "So this is the shield maiden who slew one of my best men," Edeld said, speaking in Latin which a nearby priest translated into halting Norse. "I am Saga Gunnardottir," she replied, holding her head high. "Daughter of Gunnar Thorolfsson, Jarl of Vestfold." The king's eyebrows rose slightly. "A Jarl's daughter? Interesting. Your father sends his own child to raid our monasteries." "I come of my own choice," Saga answered. "In my land, women may choose their own fate." This brought murmurs from the assembled nobles, some scornful, others intrigued. "A strange custom," the king remarked. "Though perhaps useful. Tell me, Saga Gunnardottir, what would your father offer for your safe return?" Saga met his gaze steadily. "My father would offer nothing but fire and blood. He does not negotiate with those who hold his kin captive." "A pity," Edeld sighed. "I had hoped for a more civilized resolution." "My lord," Peder interjected, stepping forward. "If I may suggest an alternative." The king gestured for him to continue. "The woman clearly has knowledge of her people's ways and their planned raids. Perhaps she could be of use to us in understanding our enemy." Saga's eyes narrowed. "I would die before betraying my people." "No one speaks of betrayal," Peder said quickly. "Merely cultural exchange. You would remain here as our guest, teaching us your language and customs, while learning ours in return." "To what end?" Saga demanded. "Peace," Peder said simply. "Understanding between our peoples could lead to trade rather than bloodshed." King Edeld stroked his beard thoughtfully. "An interesting proposal, Peder. And you would take responsibility for this, guest?" "I would, my lord." Saga could scarcely believe what she was hearing. "And if I refuse?" "Then you remain our prisoner until we decide what to do with you," the king replied coldly. "The church calls for execution of heathens who spill Christian blood, but I am a practical man. I would prefer to gain something of value from this situation." Saga understood then that she had no real choice. Death now, or a delayed fate while she played along with their game. At least the latter option gave her time to plan, to observe, perhaps even to escape. "I accept your offer," she said finally. "I will share knowledge of my people's ways. But I warn you, attempt to use what I teach against my kin, and you will regret sparing my life." A thin smile crossed the king's face. Bold words from a captive. "Very well, I accept your terms." He turned to Peder. "She is your responsibility now. If she causes any trouble, it falls on your head." As Peder led her from the hall, Saga whispered, "You realize I will escape at the first opportunity." "I would expect nothing less," he replied quietly. "Which is why you'll be guarded day and night, and housed within my own estate where I can keep watch over you personally." "Why did you intervene?" Saga asked, genuinely curious. "You could have let them execute me." Peder was silent for a moment before answering. "My grandmother told me stories of her homeland, of brave women who fought alongside men, of a people who valued strength and honor above all. When I saw you fighting, I remembered those tales." He glanced at her. "And I thought perhaps there was more to learn from you alive than dead." Saga said nothing more, but as they walked through the streets of the Saxon settlement, she studied everything, the layout of buildings, the position of guards, the patterns of daily life. Knowledge was power, and she would need every advantage if she was to survive among these Christians and eventually find her way home. Weeks passed, turning slowly into months. Winter descended upon Northumbria with a fury that reminded Saga of home, bitter winds and snow that blanketed the land in white. To her surprise, Peder treated her with respect, providing her with comfortable quarters in his large wooden hall and allowing her freedom to move about the estate, always under the watchful eyes of guards. Each day, they would spend hours together, Saga teaching him the finer points of Norse language and customs, while he instructed her in Saxon ways. Despite herself, she found him to be intelligent and curious, lacking the arrogance she had expected from a Saxon noble. "Your people believe in fate, that all is written by the Norns at the foot of Yggdrasil," Peder said one evening as they sat before the hearth fire, a game of taffel between them. "We call it Wyrd," Saga replied, moving one of her pieces across the board. "The path of each person is woven from birth, though how we walk that path is our choice. Not so different from our belief in God's plan," Peder mused. "Though your gods seem less interested in the virtue of men's souls." Saga smiled slightly. "Our gods know that men are neither wholly good nor wholly evil. They themselves are flawed. Odin sacrifices for wisdom, Thor battles his temper, Loki schemes against friend and foe alike. They understand the nature of humans because they share our weaknesses." "A comfortable theology," Peder remarked. "It asks little of you." "It asks everything," Saga countered, leaning forward. "To know that your fate is fixed, yet to fight and strive regardless, that is courage, Peder Brandrson. Your Christ promises paradise for obedience. Our gods promise only that our deeds will be remembered in the songs of the living." Their gazes held across the board, the firelight dancing in Peder's blue eyes. For a moment, Saga forgot he was her captor and she his prisoner. They were simply two people seeking understanding across a vast cultural divide. The spell was broken by the arrival of a servant bringing mulled wine. As they drank, Saga asked the question that had been troubling her. "Why have there been no attempts to ransom me? Surely a message could have reached my father by now." Peder looked uncomfortable. "I sent word to trading posts known to deal with Northmen. There has been no response." "That's impossible," Saga insisted. "My father would never abandon me." "Perhaps he cannot come," Peder suggested gently. "The winter has been harsh, the seas treacherous. No ships have been sighted along our coasts for months." Saga turned away, unwilling to let him see the doubt in her eyes. Was it possible her father thought her dead? Or worse, had he deemed her unworthy for being captured instead of dying with blade in hand? "Spring will come," Peder said, reaching across to touch her hand briefly. "With it may come word from your people." Saga jerked her hand away, suddenly reminded of the gulf between them. "Do not pity me, Saxon. I am not some maid to be comforted with soft words." "It was not pity," Peder replied quietly, rising from his seat. "Good night, Saga Gunnardottir. May your gods grant you peaceful dreams." After he left, Saga remained by the fire, watching the flames dance and thinking of home. She had not attempted escape in weeks, partly due to the weather, partly because she had begun to realize how little she knew of this land and how far she was from the coast. Without allies or knowledge of the terrain, escape might mean death in the winter wilderness. But there was another reason, one she was reluctant to admit even to herself. She had grown curious about this strange man with Norse blood in his veins, who treated her with dignity despite her status as captive. In another life, under different circumstances, they might have been. She shook her head, banishing the thought. Such feelings were a weakness she could not afford. She was a daughter of Vikings, and her destiny lay elsewhere. The prophecy had marked her for greatness, not for captivity among Christians. Yet as she retired to her chamber that night, she could not help wondering what path the Norns had truly woven for her. Spring arrived with a riot of green that transformed the drab winter landscape. With the warming weather came increased activity, farmers returning to their fields, merchants traveling the roads, and ships once more visible on the distant horizon. Saga felt the stirring of hope. Surely now word would reach her father. Surely now she might find her way home. Her opportunity came unexpectedly one bright morning when a messenger arrived at Peder's estate, bearing news that the king required his immediate presence. With Peder gone and fewer guards than usual on duty, Saga saw her chance. She had spent months learning the routines of the household, noting which guards were attentive and which were prone to distraction. She had hidden away small provisions, bread, dried meat, a knife pilfered from the kitchens. She had even managed to secure a rough map of the surrounding area, carefully questioning servants about the land between here and the coast. As dusk fell, she made her move, slipping out through the kitchens during the evening meal when the household was distracted. Her heart pounded as she crept toward the stables, planning to take a horse for her journey. Freedom was within her grasp, going somewhere. Saga froze at the sound of Peder's voice. He stepped from the shadows of the stable, his expression unreadable in the dying light. "I thought you were with the king," she said, hand moving subtly toward the hidden knife in her belt. "I was. I returned early." He moved closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. "I knew this day would come, Saga. I'm only surprised it took so long." "Then you know I cannot stay," she replied, tension thrumming through her body. "I must return to my people. And if I tried to stop you—" Saga pulled out her knife, the blade glinting in the twilight. "Then one of us would not see tomorrow's sunrise." To her surprise, Peder laughed softly. "Still the fierce shield maiden." He reached into his cloak and withdrew something that made Saga's breath catch, her iron sword, the one taken from her months ago. "I kept this safe," he said, holding it out to her hilt first. "I thought you might want it back when the time came." Saga stared at him in disbelief. "You're letting me go?" "I'm choosing not to fight what cannot be changed," Peder replied. "The Norns have woven your path, as you would say. Who am I to stand against Wyrd?" Cautiously, Saga took the sword, the familiar weight comforting in her hand. She lowered the knife but remained wary. "Why?" Peder's gaze softened. "Because in these months, I have come to know you, Saga Gunnardottir. I have seen your honor, your courage, your unwavering loyalty to your people. To keep you captive any longer would be to cage a wild hawk. It might survive, but its spirit would wither." Emotion welled in Saga's throat, unexpected and unwelcome. This man, this Saxon with Norse blood, understood her in ways few others ever had. "What will you tell your king?" she asked. "That you overpowered me and escaped," Peder said with a slight smile. "My pride will suffer, but my neck will remain intact." Saga nodded slowly, then sheathed both weapons. "I will not forget this, Peder Brandrson. If our paths cross again in battle, I will spare your life as you have spared mine." "I hope our next meeting comes in peace, not war," he replied. He hesitated, then reached for something else within his cloak, a small leather pouch. "Take this. Food for your journey, and—" He paused. "A token to remember that not all Saxons are your enemies." Saga accepted the pouch, their fingers brushing briefly. In that moment, she felt a strange connection between them, as though invisible threads of fate were binding them together in ways she could not yet understand. "The road to the coast lies east," Peder said, breaking the silence. "Follow the river. There's a settlement of traders there who deal with Northmen. They may help you find passage home." "Thank you," Saga said simply, knowing the words were inadequate. As she mounted a horse and prepared to ride away, Peder called after her softly, "Saga, may your gods watch over you." She looked back at him one last time, his figure silhouetted against the gathering darkness. "And may your god protect you, Peder Brandrson." Then she was gone, racing into the night, her heart divided between joy at her freedom and an unexpected ache at what, and whom, she was leaving behind. The trader settlement was exactly where Peder had said it would be, a cluster of wooden buildings near the mouth of the river where it met the sea. Saga approached cautiously, her hand never far from her sword. After 3 days of hard riding and sleeping rough, she was exhausted but wary. The settlement bustled with activity, merchants from various lands haggling over goods, fishermen mending nets, sailors drinking and boasting of their voyages. Saga drew curious glances in her Norse clothing, but no one challenged her presence. She made inquiries about ships heading north to Norse lands, learning that a trading vessel was scheduled to depart within days. Hope surged within her, soon she would be home, among her own people once more. As she sat in a smoky tavern that evening, nursing a cup of weak ale and planning her next steps, a shadow fell across her table. Well, well. The Jarl's daughter lives. Saga looked up to see a familiar face, Ulf the Red, her father's warrior who had questioned her presence on the raid. His scarred face showed no pleasure at finding her alive. "Ulf," she greeted him cautiously. "I am glad to see a face from home. Is my father with you?" A cruel smile twisted Ulf's lips. Gunnar Thorolfsson sailed to the halls of Valhalla 2 moons past. A fever took him in the dead of winter. The world seemed to tilt beneath Saga. Her father dead? The great Jarl who had defied tradition to raise his daughter as a warrior, gone while she was captive in a foreign land? You lie, she whispered, though she could see the truth in Ulf's eyes. Why would I, he countered, echoing Peder's words from months ago. The truth serves me better. Your brother Hakon now rules as Jarl in Vestfold. Then I must return immediately, Saga said, gathering herself. My brothers will want to know I live. Ulf laughed, the sound harsh in the crowded room. Your brothers believed you died in the raid. We saw you cornered by Saxons, no one expected you to survive. Yet here I stand, Saga replied, her hand moving to her sword hilt. Something about Ulf's manner set her nerves on edge. Indeed, he muttered, his gaze calculating. Though perhaps it would be better for all if you had died a warrior's death rather than return after months among Christians. Saga tensed, understanding dawning. What are you saying, Ulf? He leaned closer, his breath sour with ale. There are whispers, Saga Gunnardottir. Whispers that your father's mind was poisoned by that old Volva's prophecy about you. Some believe he should have drowned you at birth, as is sometimes done with unwanted daughters. What prophecy? Saga demanded, though she knew full well what he meant. Don't play ignorant, Ulf sneered. The one that claims you will rule, that a daughter would take what should belong to sons. Hakon has declared the prophecy false, a trick of the old woman to elevate a girl above her station. Saga's mind raced. If what Ulf said was true, returning home might not bring the welcome she had imagined. If Hakon had denounced the prophecy, he might see her as a threat to his newfound power. I have no interest in challenging my brother, she said carefully. Perhaps not, Ulf replied, but others might rally behind you, especially those dissatisfied with Hakon's rule. He is not as beloved as your father was. Before Saga could respond, the tavern door burst open. A group of armed men entered, their eyes scanning the room until they fell on her table. Their leader, a burly man with a beard streaked with grey, pointed directly at her. There she is. The Viking woman. Ulf's expression twisted with malicious satisfaction. I thought the Saxon dogs might pay well for information about an escaped prisoner. Particularly one who killed their soldiers. Understanding hit Saga like a physical blow, she had been betrayed by one of her own people. As the Saxon men advanced, patrons scattered out of their path. You dishonor yourself, Ulf, Saga hissed, rising to her feet. No true Northman would sell another to Christians. Honor doesn't fill coffers, Ulf replied with a shrug, backing away from the table. Besides, a woman who lives among Saxons for months without taking her own life has no honor to defend. Saga drew her sword, knowing she was outnumbered but determined to fight rather than be taken again. As the first Saxon reached her, she struck, her blade opening a gash across his chest. The man fell back with a cry, but 3 more took his place. The tavern erupted into chaos, some fleeing, others joining the fray simply for the joy of combat. Saga fought with all the skill her brothers had taught her, but the confines of the tavern limited her movement. A blow to her shoulder sent pain lancing down her arm. Another caught her across the ribs, driving the breath from her lungs. Just as she felt herself weakening, the tavern door burst open again. Through a haze of pain, Saga saw a familiar figure charging into the melee, Peder Brandrson, sword in hand, cutting his way toward her. Saga, he shouted over the din, this way. Confusion swept through her. Peder had followed her? Was this another trap? But as he reached her side, fighting off the men who had been sent to capture her, she saw the genuine concern in his eyes. He had come not to reclaim her as a prisoner, but to save her. Together they fought their way to the door, Peder shielding her injured side. Outside, 2 horses waited, saddled and ready. Can you ride? Peder asked urgently, helping her mount despite her injuries. Always, Saga managed through gritted teeth. But why are you here? No time. Peder swung into his own saddle as shouts erupted from the tavern behind them. Ride north along the coast. I know a place we can shelter." They galloped away from the settlement, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. Pain throbbed with each jolt of the horse beneath her, but Saga clung to consciousness, following Peder's lead as they rode into the gathering darkness. The small fishing hut stood alone on a rocky stretch of coastline, accessible only by a narrow path that wound down from the cliffs above. Inside, Peder tended to Saga's wounds by the light of a small fire, his touch gentle as he cleaned and bound the worst of them. "You're fortunate," he said, finishing his work. "No serious damage, though you'll be sore for days." Saga watched him through narrowed eyes. "Why did you follow me, Peder? And how did you know where to find me?" He sat back on his heels, meeting her gaze directly. "After you left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Call it instinct. I followed your trail to the settlement, then heard talk in the taverns of a Norse woman seeking passage north." He paused. "When I saw that man talking to you, or the one with the red beard, I recognized the look of betrayal. I've seen it often enough at court." "Ulf," Saga spat the name like poison. "He sold me to those Saxons." She looked up sharply. "Were they your men?" "No," Peder shook his head firmly. "Bounty hunters, most likely. There's still a price on your head for the man you killed during the raid." Saga absorbed this information, along with what Ulf had told her about her father's death and Hakon's denial of the prophecy. Her world had shifted beneath her feet once again. "My father is dead," she said flatly. "And it seems I may not be welcome in my homeland after all." Peder's expression softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Saga. Truly." "He died believing I was lost," she continued, a rare crack appearing in her warrior's composure. "After all he sacrificed to prepare me for the destiny the Volva foresaw." "What destiny?" Peder asked quietly. Saga hesitated, then told him of the prophecy spoken at her birth, of the daughter who would shape the fate of realms, who would succeed where kings and warriors had failed. As she spoke, Peder listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. "And now your brother Hakon has declared this prophecy false." "According to Ulf," Saga replied. "Though he may have been lying about that as well." "Either way, returning home now would be dangerous," Peder concluded. "If Hakon fears the prophecy, he might see you as a threat. If Ulf has spread tales of your time among Saxons, others might question your loyalty." Saga stared into the flames, the full weight of her situation settling upon her. "I am without home or kin, in a land where my people are feared and hated. The path ahead is dark indeed." "Not entirely," Peder said softly. "You have one ally in this land, at least." Their eyes met across the fire, and Saga felt again that strange connection between them, a thread of fate binding Saxon and Viking together despite all that should divide them. "Why do you help me, Peder Brandrson? What do you gain?" He was silent for a long moment before answering. "In the months you were under my protection, I came to see in you qualities I've found in few others: courage, honor, wisdom beyond your years. When I let you go, I told myself it was the right thing to do, that you belonged with your people." He looked down at his hands. "But I could not forget you, Saga. Your face haunted my dreams. When I realized you might be in danger, I couldn't stay away." His honesty surprised her, as did the warmth that spread through her chest at his words. "In another life, in another world. I am still your enemy," she reminded him, though the words lacked conviction. "Are you?" he challenged gently. "Or are we both simply people caught between worlds, trying to find our path?" Saga had no answer for that. Instead, she asked, "What happens now?" "We rest here tonight," Peder said practically. "Tomorrow, when you're stronger, we decide what path to take." As they settled for sleep on opposite sides of the small hut, Saga's mind turned over possibilities. Return home and face potential rejection, or worse, remain in this Christian land where she would always be an outsider? Neither option appealed to her warrior's heart. The Volva's words echoed in her thoughts as sleep finally claimed her, a daughter born of storm and blood. Her hands will shape the fate of realms. Morning brought clarity and decision. As Saga and Peder broke their fast with bread and dried fish, she outlined her plan. "I cannot return to Vestfold while Hakon rules and doubts my loyalty," she said firmly. "Nor can I remain here in Northumbria where I am hunted. But there is another option." Peder raised an eyebrow, waiting. "The Western Isles," Saga continued. "The lands your people call the Hebrides. Norse settlers have established themselves there, yet they maintain trade with Christian kingdoms. It is a place between worlds, like us." "Us?" Peder repeated, a question in his voice. Saga met his gaze directly. "You cannot return to your king now, can you? Not after helping me escape a second time." Peder's silence confirmed her suspicion. "Come with me," she said, surprising herself with the offer. "Your knowledge of Christian ways would be valuable among settlers who must deal with both worlds." "And I?" She hesitated, then continued honestly, "I would value your companionship on this journey." Something kindled in Peder's blue eyes, hope, perhaps, or something deeper. "You would trust a Saxon to accompany you to a new homeland?" "I trust Peder Brandrson," Saga replied simply. "The man who set me free when he could have kept me captive. The man who came to my aid when all others had abandoned me." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken feelings and possibilities. Finally, Peder nodded. "To the Western Isles, then." Together. They set out that day, traveling north along the coast, avoiding settlements and keeping to the wild places. Their journey was not easy. Twice they narrowly avoided patrols searching for them, and once they were forced to fight off bandits who thought them easy prey. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. Saga found herself sharing stories of her childhood in Vestfold, of her secret training with her brothers, of her father's quiet pride in her accomplishments. In turn, Peder told her of his grandmother's tales of the North, of his own struggle to balance his Norse heritage with his Saxon upbringing, of his dreams for peace between their peoples. By the time they reached a small port where ships sailed regularly to the Western Isles, something fundamental had changed between them. What had begun as captor and captive, then reluctant allies, had transformed into something neither had anticipated, a deep connection that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. The night before they were to take ship, they camped in a sheltered cove away from prying eyes. As they sat beside their small fire, watching the stars emerge above the sea, Peder finally gave voice to what had been growing between them. "The Christians speak of God's plan, that all things happen for a purpose," he said quietly. "I never fully believed it until now." "What purpose do you see in all that has befallen us?" Saga asked. Peder turned to her, the firelight casting his features in gold. "That perhaps the prophecy spoken at your birth did not mean what your father thought. Perhaps shaping the fate of realms doesn't require conquering them or ruling them." "What then?" "Bridging them," Peder suggested. "Creating understanding between worlds that have known only bloodshed and hatred. A Viking who understands Saxons, a Saxon with Norse blood, together, might we not build something new in these Western Isles?" The idea resonated within Saga like the striking of a deep bell. Was this truly what the Volva had foreseen? Not conquest, but creation? Not division, but union? "My father raised me to be a leader of warriors," she said slowly. "But perhaps there is more than one way to lead." Peder reached across the space between them, his hand finding hers. The prophecy spoke of a crown of stars. "Look up, Saga." She raised her eyes to the night sky, where countless stars shone in their eternal patterns. In that moment, she understood, her crown would not be gold or silver, but the wisdom gained through her journey between worlds. "A new beginning," she murmured, her fingers tightening around his. "A new beginning," Peder echoed, drawing her closer until their lips met in a kiss that seemed written in the stars themselves, a union of Saxon and Viking, of Christian and pagan, of man and woman who had found in each other what their worlds had long denied. 5 years later, the settlement on the Isle of Skye had grown from a handful of longhouses to a thriving community. Norse settlers and Saxon traders lived side by side, their children playing together regardless of ancestry. At the heart of the settlement stood a great hall built in the Viking style but incorporating elements of Saxon craftsmanship, a physical manifestation of the bridge between cultures that had been forged there. Within the hall, Saga Gunnardottir sat in the high seat, her husband Peder Brandrson beside her. On her lap rested their young daughter, whose bright eyes held the promise of both bloodlines. Another ship has arrived from Dublin, reported Leif, one of their most trusted advisors. They bring word that King Haakon of Vestfold seeks an alliance with our settlement. Peder glanced at Saga, noting the slight tightening of her jaw at the mention of her brother. And what does Haakon offer in exchange for this alliance? Recognition of Lady Saga's authority here, and a formal acknowledgement that the Volva's prophecy has been fulfilled, Leif replied. He admits that he was wrong to doubt it, seeing now that his sister has indeed shaped the fate of realms by creating this place where Norse and Saxon ways exist in harmony. A murmur ran through the gathered assembly, satisfaction from those who had followed Saga from the beginning, surprise from more recent arrivals who knew little of the prophecy. And what does my brother ask in return? Saga inquired, her voice steady. Trade agreements, mutual defense against raiders, and the promise that his son might one day foster here, to learn the wisdom of both worlds. Saga exchanged a look with Peder, years of shared understanding passing between them in that glance. They had built something remarkable here, not through conquest or subjugation, but through respect and cooperation. The old Volva's prophecy had indeed come true, though in a way none could have foreseen. Tell King Haakon of Vestfold that his sister, Saga Gunnardottir, welcomes his alliance, she declared, rising from her seat with her daughter in her arms. Let it be known that here, in this place between worlds, we forge a new path, one that honors the wisdom of the old ways while embracing the promise of the new. As the assembly cheered, Peder stood beside her, his hand finding hers once more. Above them, through the smoke hole in the roof, stars began to appear in the darkening sky, a crown of light for the woman who had fulfilled her destiny not through war, but through love. Your father would be proud, Peder whispered. Saga smiled, thinking of Gunnar Thorolfsson who had believed in her when no one else would. Yes, she agreed softly. I believe he would. Together they stood, Saxon and Viking, united by a love that had overcome the barriers of culture and conflict. And around them grew a community that would, in time, become legendary, a place where the forgotten prophecy of a Viking series had given birth not to conquest, but to peace.